what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Now in today's video, we're going to cover a very exciting topic, and it's going to be the complete guide to building out a real-world application using the Flutter framework. Now, if you're not aware of what Flutter is, it's basically a cross-platform tool that allows you to build out iOS apps and also Android apps using a single programming language called Dart. Now in today's lesson, we're going to cover 4 very important topics related to Flutter and how to build out applications, right? So before I go over these topics, why don't I walk you through a demo of the application we're going to build out throughout today's lesson. And basically it is this application in the middle right here. So this is an application that is a very, very simple list view that allows you to grab data from the internet. And once you have that data, we render all of that inside of this list. And upon clicking into one of these list items, we navigate to a details page for that item. So you can see if I click on the second item, this list looks a little bit different, right? All right, so that's basically the demo of our application. And as you can see, it is not trivial, it's fairly complicated, and it involves a lot of programming. All right, so onto these 4 topics on the left side over there. The first thing we're going to go over is actually very important, and it's called Reactive States. And I'll show you what the difference is between something called a stateless widget versus a stateful widget in Flutter. And if you're already familiar with React.js or React Native, this will be an easy topic to understand. But if you don't know what React is just yet, I'll walk you through step by step what exactly a state is inside of our application. But basically, this app right here has 2 states: this fully loaded state with all of these items, and the second state is the loading state that has that circular progress indicator. All right, so once we tackle that topic, we will move on to how to fetch data using Flutter and how to actually perform some network activity inside of our application over here. So every time I hit refresh, we actually grab some data through the network, and that's going to involve me showing you how to set up some Flutter dependencies inside of our YAML file. So I'll tell you exactly what that is later on. And then after that, we'll move on to parsing data using JSON. So all of this data is being fetched through an API that's giving us JSON data back, and I'll show you how to transform that data into JSON objects that we can use inside of a list like this. And finally, we're going to move on to how to navigate between multiple pages inside of our application. And this app right here has 2 pages. This page right here for the details of my Instagram Firebase course. And that's basically a navigational page route, and I'll show you how to write out that code as well. All right, so having said all of that, you can already tell that this video might be a little long because these topics are actually fairly complicated. So in the description below, I'll include some timestamps to different areas of this video that you can jump to and from if you're, maybe watching this video for the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or even the 4th time. Now, why don't we go ahead and begin by starting a brand new project inside of Visual Studio Code right now. All right, everybody, welcome to the coding session for today's video. We are going to start off this lesson by creating a brand new Flutter project inside of Visual Studio Code, which is this black box over here. So let's create a new project by going to View and Command Palette. And because I already have the Flutter plugin installed, I can create a new project by typing in Flutter new project, click on that, give our application a name like so, LPTA, hit the enter, and just make sure to store it somewhere inside of your computer so that you can find your project a little bit later on. So here we go. The Flutter plugin is now creating our project, and I would like to expand this just a little bit wider so I can get some space to work with. And here we go. We have this main.dart file created for us by the plugin, which includes a ton of code. And this is the template project or the template application that the plugin creates for us. And so a lot of this code is kind of difficult to understand if you just keep it. So why don't I delete everything and start from scratch? This way I can explain to you how to implement this stateless widget and this stateful widget for our application on the right side over there. So everything looks pretty awesome, and I'm now ready to begin. And the first thing I would like to do is to create a class that helps us kind of create this application over here that it's complaining about. So why don't I create a brand new class, and we will call this class Real World App, and we will extend something on the right side over here. Now, typically, if you are creating a view for your application, you will want to use a stateless widget, kind of like this, but we are going to use a stateful widget instead. So just type in stateful widget. And we're using this because our application contains two states, this loaded state with this list view, and also that circular loader thing on the middle over here. So that's kind of why I'm using a stateful widget, and you'll see why we use this a little bit later on. So before I can show you, I'll have to type out a little bit more code that is also might be pretty confusing. So let's just walk through this one step at a time. The first thing you want to do is to look at the error message over here that tells you to override this create state method. And this guy wants you to return something called a state that is of type stateful widget. So let me just type out another companion class that represents this state object over here. So we'll call this something like real world state, and we will extend something called a state, and I'll use real world app over here. And this guy wants you to override the build method. So let's just type in build, and you'll get these two methods that you need to override for your application to work. Now, the reason why real world app is over here is because this guy is a stateful widget, and we want to return a version of this guy. So why don't I go ahead and say return new real world state, like so, ended that with a semicolon, and everything should be good to go here. I'm going to provide the real world app of there and hit the save. And now the question is, should we run this application inside of the simulator right now? Well, I'm going to try to do that. So let's hit the bottom button down there. I'm going to select one of these simulators, and I want to use this simulator on the right side, and that's the iPhone 10. And I have that selected. Let me click on this little bug icon, hit the play button, and we're pretty much going to launch this bit of code inside of our application over here, or the simulator, and we'll get a little new icon to show up at the last slot, maybe after 10 or 15 seconds, and there we go. Everything seems to be up and running, and we now have this message over here, and it says that the build function is returning a null, and that's this guy over here. So that's the error that we are now running into, and I'm currently still inside of main.dart. Okay, so make sure you set up your application using the stateful widget and some kind of state object like this, and we'll use the state in just a moment. But why don't we first fix this error by returning some things. And for the first application widget, you have to provide something called a material app. And inside of here, you'll just say something like home. And this home guy is typically going to be a scaffold for your very first component. This way you can provide an app bar like this, new app bar, and this title will be saying, I don't know, let's say real world app bar all in caps. And sometimes you might be a little bit confused as to what these error messages mean, but this title over here really expects you to provide a widget. So we will say new text, and this guy is a text widget. And if I hit a semicolon over here and hit the refresh button, hopefully our application will be up and running. So always a good idea to see your application inside of the simulator as you modify your code, and make sure you have this inside of your real world state, and everything should be okay. Now the next thing you want to do is probably provide something inside of the body of your scaffold. So this is the scaffold with the app bar, and you just want to type in body over here and say maybe something like new center, and inside of the center you can provide a child. You can say new and maybe a text over here and say 111 222, hit the save. So I'm just hitting Command S to save it. You can do that to hot reload or just hit the refresh button up here. And there you go, you have 111 and 222. you can now replace this with a circular progress indicator and hit Command S. You'll see that circular animation inside of your application right away. So that's another nice thing about Flutter. It's really easy to develop your applications because hot reloading makes changes appear right away instantaneously, which is pretty awesome and overall reduces the time that you need to spend on coding out your application. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to adding some features to our application. For example, we want to add this refresh button up here that toggles between two different states of our app, the loading state and also the finished loading state over there. So I'll show you how to put a refresh button at the top there by going into the app bar section, and let's see, I think we can provide an actions property, and this guy is just a list of buttons. So why don't we say new icon button, and I think in here we have to specify the icon property. And this guy, I probably will have to provide icon, and inside of here you can say icons.refresh, and that's this big circular arrow. So I'm going to hit Command S, and once you save it and reload, you'll see this button up there in the dark blue. Might be a little bit hard to see, but it's definitely there. In order to make it pressable or white, you want to go inside of the icon button. So I'll say up here on pressed. And for the onPress callback function, you can execute some custom code, and let's say brace, and we'll just say print over here and reloading and that, and refresh our application. So once you have the onPress, you'll have the ability to press on this button, and it kind of has this animation of that circular gray area. And down over here, you see the text being printed out inside of the console as well. So everything is pretty good. Printing out messages in Flutter is really, really simple with the print statement like that. All right, so pretty awesome. All right, so now that we have this onPress function implemented inside of the action bar widget, I would like to now move on to introducing some state changes inside of our application. And the way I'm going to do this is to go all the way up at the very top of my real world state class, and I'll introduce a variable called isLoading, and I'll set this guy equal to true at the very beginning, because at the very beginning we should be loading some data from the internet. And I'm using this underscore because this represents a private variable, so I'll just follow that convention for now. And down at the center widget over here under the body, which is currently holding this circular progress indicator, I'm going to use the isLoading variable, and I'll use a ternary operator, and I'll use a colon over here, and let's just hit enter, and I'll say new text, and we'll say finished loading, and ... So why don't I hit the refresh button over there, and you will see that nothing has changed. We still see this thing over here. Now, with all of the code that we've set up so far, we can modify this variable whenever we hit the refresh button by saying this. I'm going to call this method called setState, and this expects you to pass in a function, which is very simple. You just type out parentheses and a brace over here, and finally a semicolon like that. And inside of this code, we are just going to provide the change of isLoading and set this guy equal to false. Now I'm going to save my project, and it's going to hot reload some code, and hopefully when I press the refresh button, you'll see that the circular loader goes away, and now the loading is set to false. Hence, the ternary operator evaluates this expression over here to the text widget, which says is finished loading. So if I modify that, reload again, you'll see that the state of our object is currently loading equals to false. Hence, we get this text widget showing up inside of our application. And so this is how a stateful widget operates. You have the ability to call this function over here to set the state. And anytime these variables are being modified, the body over here is re-evaluated again, so that whatever you see inside of the widgets that you are presenting will match according to the logic of your states. Okay, so now that we've introduced the ability to modify our application through a state variable, let's move on to the next topic for today, which is to discuss how we actually perform network activity inside of our application. Now, if you look at the finished version over here, every time we hit this refresh button, we are actually fetching some data from the internet, and that data comes from this URL over here that is this entire JSON blob. Now you can kind of see inside of this list of videos, we have 3 videos, and that's pretty much what each one of these cells are representing. So why don't I go ahead and show you how to easily fetch this data using a package called HTTP, which is over here. So if you go to this Flutter.io website, you can find how to fetch data from the internet. And this page is probably really long for this video, so I'm not going to go through the entire thing, and I'll just show you how to set up your project by modifying the pubspec YAML to install this package, HTTP. So let's open up pubspec and copy over this line over here somehow. So let me just quickly show you how to do this by opening up pubspec YAML, and here are the dependencies. I have a project over here that already has the latest version of 11.3.16, so you just want to hit save and it will install the proper packages that you just specified over here. Next thing you want to do is to go back into your main Dart file, and all the way down at the completed example, you can kind of see they have imported the HTTP package as HTTP. So let's go up here and paste that code right over there. So this green arrow or the green underline says that we are not using it. So why don't we use it inside of our application somehow? And the way I'm going to do this is to modify the onPress function over here. And so right after we set this state, why don't we also call this method called fetch data? And I will define this method up here. So hopefully you are familiar with method calls. So let's just establish that and print attempting to fetch data from network, and end that with a semicolon. Hit the save, hit the refresh button over there. You might want to go to the debug console and you will see that we are now attempting to fetch data from the network. So let's perform the actual fetch using HTTP, which is what we just imported. And you simply want to call this get method using some kind of URL. And that URL comes from this URL, YouTube home feed at my API website. So let me just copy that and paste that up here. So let's define a final string, and we'll just call it URL, let it be of type string, and URL goes inside of here, and you want to add a semicolon at the very end. All right, so pretty awesome stuff. And now you want to actually say, what exactly does the get method give us? Well, it gives us this future response object. So let me just say final response equals all of that. And what you can do is you can say print. So let's just print out what response is right after we fetch the data. All right, so I'm gonna hit save. And what you'll see is that when I hit the refresh, we actually attempt to fetch the data, and the response is an instance of future. Now, in order to kind of unwrap this future object, you have to do something called an asynchronous await. So the first thing you need to do is every time you have an async method call, you want to define it as async as well up here, which will then allow you to perform these await calls on your future method calls, which basically tells it to just wait for the response to come back, and then you will execute code on the next lines below it. All right, so this is an idea that comes from promises, and maybe I'll link a video down below that will explain how to work with promises better. But this is just the method call that we need, and I'll save again. And once you hit the reload, you will see that the response is now an instance of response instead of an instance of future. And now what we can do is we can say if response dot status code, if this is equal to, I believe 200 is the HTTP OK, we can print out response dot body as well. So I will remove the bottom print line and hit the save one more time, hot reload, and hit the refresh. And now what you will see is the actual JSON data at that URL over there. So you can kind of see the user ID. We should have videos over here. And we have ID1 and name and Instagram Firebase. So that's pretty much this stuff right over there. So ID, name, and the Instagram Firebase course. So that's basically how we really easily get HTTP data using this get method. All right, so hopefully that is pretty straightforward, and you basically have to kind of understand this bit of code and use this as reference. It's really hard to remember this stuff if you haven't typed it out before. So just refer to this code every time you need to fetch data inside of your application. And now what you would like to do is to somehow parse this JSON data out using some kind of JSON data structure. So you can say JSON like that, but it doesn't exactly work. And what I want to really do is to decode some JSON inside of my project. And the way I'm going to do that is to import something else inside of my project called, let's see, Dart. And I think I want the IO library, which allows me to go down here in the JSON decode. And let's see what I want to do. I want to say JSON.decode, and I want to decode this response body. And it doesn't look like it likes me using that JSON. So what you want to do is actually import this convert library instead. So a lot of new libraries that you have access to if you are using Dart. So let me just import the convert. And I can already tell that convert is being used. So JSON decode, let me just type this out again. Expects you to pass in some kind of string object, and it will return you some kind of map. And let's see, the source will be the response.body. And here is my final map equals that. So pretty darn awesome. And what I can do now is to simply print out what map and use the key of videos, and that with a semicolon. I will comment that out and save, hot reload, refresh. And here we go. I'm going to hit the refresh button again, and it fetches the data from our network. And right over here, we are only printing out the information related to the video structure inside of our JSON. So this is the video structure. And what you can do is you can capture this inside of a variable. So let's copy that. And let's see. We're going to say final videos. Let's see, JSON equals map and videos. And you can do a couple of things with this video JSON. And because I know it's an array, you can kind of see it's an array because it's inside of this bracket. You can print out a lot of the information inside of it. So let's say videos JSON.for each, and we'll use a function inside of here, and we'll say video, and then we will use a method like that. And basically, I just want to show you how to print out the data inside of this JSON blob. And what I'll do is print out, and we'll say video, and we'll just use the name like that and use a semicolon. I will now refresh and hit this button one more time. You will see that after we are attempting to fetch the data, we get it all back, and then we are printing out the video names over here. So Instagram Firebase, Intermediate Core Data, and Kindle Basic Training, which are the names over here. So you see this, that, and this as well. So that's how you fetch data using HTTP, and that's how you also parse data using JSON. Okay, so up to this point of the lesson, what we have so far is the ability to fetch our JSON data using the HTTP package. And now what I would like to do is to fix some of the logic for this refresh button on the top right. And what I'm going to do is to actually flip the toggle over here. So every time I hit the refresh, I want to actually make the is loading to true like that. And I would like to copy the state setting and move it into the fetch data function and just put it over here. So I want to actually tab this back to the left side, and I'm going to hit save now, and I want to modify this to false and hit the reload one more time. And you'll see that every time I fetch the JSON data, we will get the progress indicator, and once it's finished, we set the state to loading equals to false, and that's why we see the finish loading text at the bottom, because of the state change over here inside of the body. All right, so that is excellent. And now what we want to do is to actually show a list of items instead of just the finished loading text, kind of like what we have in the finished version of the application. So why don't we move on to doing just that by modifying this widget, and we will build a list using ListView Builder. And let's just hit enter and type in a couple of different properties. So the first one is the item count property. And if you type in 5 over here, you can render something using the item builder property. And this guy expects you to return something using a context and the row number of I, like that. And make sure to end it with a brace. And inside of here, I'm just going to simply return a new text. And let's just say, what do we want for our string? A row, and colon and $I for string interpolation. And we will hit the semicolon here. I'm going to hit save. And you will see that we have 5 rows, 0 up to 4, because we specified 5 here. If I hit save with 15, you'll see 15 rows. So hopefully this is pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to explain this any further. And what we would like to do instead of specifying 15 is to capture the JSON data up here so that we can use it for the list count for the number of items. So this is very simple and straightforward. If we capture the JSON data from videos JSON and just perhaps declare a new variable up here. So I'm going to say var, and let's just call this videos, like that. And all the way over here, so you see videos JSON, we are going to comment some of this code out. So let me just comment out the for each and say, let's see, videos is going to show up right here. And I think you can say this dot videos and set it equal to video JSON from the line just above. And all the way down at the bottom, which is the item count for our list builder, you can say this dot videos dot length, like that. All right, so let's hit the save button one more time, and you'll see this over here. It says that the getter length was called on the null variable of this dot videos. So this guy over here, you want to actually first check if this dot videos is not equal to null, and then use that variable. Otherwise, just use 0 like so. And what you'll get is a 0 row list right there. And let's just move back to this guy. I believe I want to move this right below here. So let's just say that, and we will hit the save one more time. We will refresh now, and we will get the 3 items inside of our list, which is pretty much what is inside of video JSON. And that's because we have 3 videos inside of this list over there. Okay, so that's how we get our list to kind of start rendering some items based on the objects we are getting from the network. And now what I can do is inside of the ListView Builder for this item builder, let's actually return something that makes sense, right? So what I mean is we want to render out a row with maybe a picture at the top and a bit of text right underneath it. And so this is a column widget. If you want to render things vertically, you use a column, and this down here is a row. So I'm not going to build out this thing completely. I'll just use a column for the vertical items, and we will see what that looks like over here. So instead of returning the text with a row, let's return a new column. And this guy has something called children, which is a list of vertical widgets that you can render out. What I'm going to include at the bottom is a divider. So let me just specify that at the very end there. And on the top of the divider are all of these elements here. So this is the horizontal divider. I'm going to include a text component. So let's say new text like that. And we actually want to include something like the video name. So let me just put that in there for now, and that with a semicolon, and comment that out, hit the save. You will see that we have 0, 1, and 2, which is this text component here. All right, so pretty awesome. I'm going to hit a new line over here underneath item builder. And let me say final video equals this dot videos, and we will capture the index at the slot of I. So this is 0 and 1 and 2. And down here, we are just going to access that video object from above and use the name key from our dictionary and just hit save, and you'll see our text changing over there. And that's because this video object is the dictionary that we have that we fetched from our JSON call. All right, so that's how that works. And in addition to the name, we also have other properties inside of that dictionary, such as image URL. So we're going to use that to populate the image right above the name for our video. So let me show you how to do that by going back inside of here and on top of the text. Okay, so right above the text, I'm going to provide an image with new image.network. And inside of here, I'm going to access the video and using the key of image URL, and that with a comma and all the errors will go away. And that's the image URL over there, which is just an image. And now I'll just hit the hot reload and you'll see the image show up momentarily. And that's exactly what our list view looks like right now. If you want to provide the padding around the elements inside of your cell, this is pretty easy to do, and I'll show you how to do that right now. And the way I'm going to do that is to use a new container, and inside of the container we can provide some of the things that we can actually use. So I'm going to say the child of this container is a new column widget, and I'll provide a children widget here. And let me just copy these two items, so paste that in there and use a comma there. And if you right click here, you can format your document and all of the tabbing will change to this. So this is the container that we have. Let me just hot reload everything again. And what I can do inside of this container, which is above the horizontal divider, is to provide something called, let's see, spacing, or is it padding? Yeah, I believe it's padding, but not for the column. And I believe it's padding over here, new edge insets, and all, let's say 16.0, hit the save. You'll have 16 padding for all of the elements inside of your container, which is our image and the text over here. If you want to provide spacing for the text and image, you can say new container. And this guy, you say height, and whatever you want, maybe 6.0, and hit the comma, you'll get the 6 spacing just like that. Maybe 8 is a little better, hit the save, and the spacing just enlarges like so. Now for the name, if you want to change the text to be a little bit bolder or larger, you can say comma, hit the space, and we'll say style. And this guy needs to be a new text style. And inside of here, I believe you can say font size of 16.0, hit the save. You'll get your font to be a little bit larger. And if you want it to be bold, you can do this as well. Instead of here, font weight. And let's see, that's not what I want, font weight. And this guy is not scrolling for me, so let me just hit enter there. And the font weight, you probably want to give it the font weight of bold if you want it to be bold like so. And the bold kind of shows up like that. All right, so that's how you render out a cell for each one of your items inside of your list. And one thing that you might have to change over here is the alignment of your text. So you see how these two bits of names right here are kind of center aligned, right? And that's because of the alignment of a column inside of your cell widgets. So this is the image container, and I'll show you how to do this by, let's see, I want to left align all of the text. And the way you do that is to provide something called a cross-axis alignment, and you'll say this and just say start and a hot reload, and all of these items will be aligned to the start of this cross-axis. So if it's a column, the cross-axis is the horizontal. And if you have a row, then it's the opposite. All right, so congratulations for making it this far into this video. We are very, very close to the end here. And the only feature we are missing is the ability to click on one of these list items and go to a different page inside of our app, right? So clicking onto here will lead us to a different page. And let me show you how to do this, but first, what I want to do is to introduce some refactoring inside of our application, because you'll notice that this code all the way down to that semicolon is pretty hard to understand if you just look at it without any of the editing that you will be introducing later on. So what I want to do is to map this into a separate class. So what I mean is I would like to create a separate class down at the very bottom over here. So let's say I create a view class that is simply a widget. So I will call this a video cell, and we will extend the class of a stateless widget like so. Okay, so every time you extend a widget, you want to provide the build method for your class. And this guy, you just want to return a widget. So let's say return new text like that. And this is a video cell, and that with a semicolon. Hit the save, and now I can use this video cell instead of all this stuff. So what I mean is, instead of returning this column of widgets, let's try to return so you return a new video cell and hit a semicolon, hit the save, and you'll see that all of these cells are just saying this is a new video cell, right? So hopefully that makes sense for this object. And obviously we don't want to show just that text. We want to show all of our widgets for our video. And the way I'm going to do this is to introduce a property for this class, and we will say final for a constant property, and we will call this a video, and we'll just end it like that. And next we will apply a constructor for our video cell that also sets this video. So the way you do this is to just say video cell for your constructor, and inside of here you just want to say this dot video, and there you go. This is your constructor that helps you initialize whatever you pass in here for this property inside of your class. It might be a little strange, but I really enjoy using this type of syntax because it's very concise, and I think it's really easy to read. So let me show you how to use it now by passing in the video inside of our video cell here. So if you type this out, you can say video cell, and inside of here you need to pass in some kind of video object, and it just so happens that the video is up here already, so just paste that in there and you'll be fine. What you want to do inside of here is to copy all of this and just take that and paste it inside of your video cell widget. And so just paste that in there. You probably want to format the document so that the spacing is correct, and you can hit save now. And what you'll get is your video cell is now responsible for rendering out the items inside of your list. That way your code inside of here isn't so darn crazy. And now it's much cleaner. You just have 2 lines for the item builder, and video cell makes a lot of sense for exactly what you want to render as one of your items for your list view. Okay, so that's the first step inside of the refactoring process. The next thing you probably want to do in a production style application is to introduce separate files for your views inside of your app, right? That only makes sense. So let me show you how to do that. By going up here and introducing a new folder, you can just call this views. That's a pretty good name. And inside of here, you can create this class. So let's just hit a plus for the file, and we will call this video and underscore cell.dart for the actual file extension. And then inside of here, you can go back to main.dart and cut all of this file, or this code, cut that out of that file there, and paste that into this file. Now, all of these widgets, they actually come from a different library inside of Dart. So let me see if I can import this guy, and I believe it's called material, maybe it's that. So package Flutter material Dart. You can save this file, it should work. However, you also have to make sure that this main.dart, this class, you also want to import this video cell that you just removed from this file. So the way to do that is to go all the way up to the very top, and obviously you want to import it. So import, and this guy you want to say // for the views directory, just do that. And then you want to type in video underscore cell.dart. It should show up in the autocomplete. And once you import that, you can scroll back down to your video cell, and that'll be okay. You can hit the refresh. Make sure you save all your files, so save all. And everything should be good to go. Your file is going to run correctly, and all of your cells should render out nicely like so. Okay, so that's how you do the refactoring for your application. Hopefully you found that helpful. And now what you would like to do is to somehow activate a new page every time you click on one of those cells over there. So let's see how we can do that by making these items kind of tappable or pressable. And the way I am going to do that is to go back into the item builder for our list view, and I'm going to wrap this video cell inside of a button. So let's say return new flat button. And the reason why I'm using a button is because it has a press handler like that guy. And I believe you can also provide a child. So this guy will be my new video cell with the video object up there. And the onPress is just simply a callback function. So you see it's a callback function that needs to be a void return type. So this guy just looks like that. It's really hard to explain this stuff other than just typing it out. And inside of here, we can say print, and we'll say video cell tapped and colon, and we'll say I like that, semicolon, hit the save. And now every time I press on one of these guys, you'll see it says video cell tapped at 0. This guy is 1, this guy is 2. And I believe the flat button comes with some padding, so we can say new edge inset all of 0.0, hit the save, reload, and that'll take away the padding from our button. And you'll also notice that when you click on it, it also has this circular animation that makes the tap have a down state and an out state as well. So really neat stuff there. Now the ultimate question here is, how exactly do I navigate to a different page inside of my application, right? So clicking on there, how do I get to this page? Well, this is pretty easy, and if you Google search for the solution, you'll find this using the navigator. You can say push, and this expects you to push using some kind of context and some kind of page route object. So let me just type this out and show you exactly what you need to input. The context property is this up there, so we'll be using the ListView Builder context. Over here for the route, let's define a new route with new material page route. That's what that guy looks like. And I personally do not remember a lot of the syntax, so I'm going to use the project that I have off the screen. This guy, you need to say context and just return some kind of widget over here. So maybe a text widget, which is probably not the best thing, but we will use that in any case. So I believe I am missing another parentheses there, maybe a semicolon, and that looks pretty darn good. If I reload right now, and if I press one of these cell items, you will see that it will navigate to a new page, kind of like that. All right, so if you swipe from the left, you can activate the swipe to back, and that's how you go back using this application state that we are in. All right, so the question that you want to answer now is, how do we provide a brand new page instead of this ugly looking black background with the red text like that? And basically we are going to create a new scaffold page that contains a app bar and also a home or a body widget. So the way I am going to do this is, let's see, for this text thing, I want to use a new class instead. So let's say class, and we will say detail page, and this extends a stateless widget. And this guy, we will just simply say build, and we will return a, let's see, return new scaffold. This guy comes with an app bar, new app bar, and title, you know, detail page. I believe this needs to be a new text widget, so cut that, new text. And you'll notice that it's really fast to type in Flutter. All of this code, once you remember it, it's really easy to develop your applications. So inside of here is the body, and this guy we will say new center. Inside of here we have a child, and I just know that because the center is a container, it always has some kind of child property to it. This guy will say new text, and you know, detail, detail, and detail. So this is our detailed page. I'm just going to copy this, and let me replace this, and let's see, I believe I can just do that. And hit the hot reload, we will go back one page over, and we will click into that. And the detail page is going to be navigated to using the material page route, which is simply the navigation of doing this. And it goes to this page, and the detailed page looks like that, right? So this is pretty simple and straightforward, and definitely self-explanatory in my opinion. And for this page, you obviously want to show something else. For example, you want to show a page that is related to the item that you click into. So all of these guys are actually fetching additional data from my API at this page. So let me just pull this guy back up. And I believe I have something called course detail, and you want to pass in the ID number. So this is 1, so this is 1 right here, and this is 2 and 3. If you just use 1, you will get a different list that kind of looks like that. If you are interested in how to parse this stuff, you can download the project from the description link below that shows you how to build out this completed version of the project. I am not going to show you how to do that because all that code is pretty much doing the exact same thing that we did inside of this initial page right here. We are simply rendering out a different list, and this contains JSON and a row instead of a column. But yeah, that's pretty much how this application is made. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. A very, very long video on how to build out a complete real-world application using the new Flutter framework. If you want to download the source code for today's video, you can find a link down in the description below. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Preparing all of this content and actually recording it takes a surprisingly long amount of time. So if you want to support the channel, make sure to check out the courses that you can purchase down in the description as well. That's going to be it for today. I will see you perhaps next week on the very, very next lesson. Bye-bye, everyone.